How many hours a week should writers write? This is something that beginning writers ask all the time. And doesn't matter. Is there a secret number that makes you a real writer? Today we're going to talk about that.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Monte channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Monte and I'm a women's fiction author, and I come to you every Friday to offer you some writing tips to help you write your book. So today, let's talk about how long you should be writing. So if you want to complete a novel, we talked about last week, or you just have some other writing goal, then how many hours should you be dedicating to this work, right? So I'm going to start with it depends, right? Every writer has a different writing goal and every writer has a different schedule, right? So we have other things that we have to get done. So it's going to depend on your project and it's going to depend on your schedule, on how many hours you can dedicate logically to something like writing. So now that I've said that, though, let's talk about reality here, okay? Common sense tells us that the less time you dedicate to something, the less successful you're going to be, right? It just makes sense. So if I want to learn how to cook and I want to learn how to make something, if I only put in 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day, I'm going to be less successful, can't speak today, than if I dedicate 2 hours a day to doing it. It's just logic that the more time I spend doing something, the better I'm going to be at doing it. Maybe those 30 minutes, though, that I spend doing something are very quality. I'm really getting amazing instruction. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm learning faster than if I spend 2 hours kind of fumbling through something and not knowing what I'm doing. So it's quality time as well. It's not just length of time. So that matters as well, okay? But in general, the more time that you spend practicing something, doing something, the better you're going to be and the more successful you're going to be as well. Now in business, it's interesting that sometimes entrepreneurs, and I've read a lot of articles and, about recommended, how entrepreneurs can be more successful. And, people would put in like 14, 16-hour days to create their business or to work at somebody else's business, to move up the ladder. And what they have found is that it doesn't actually make them more productive to be working those 14 or 16-hour days. They suffer a lot of burnout. They kind of lose focus. So a lot happens because they're putting in so many hours. But what they felt was dedication of working 6 or 7 days a week, 14 to 16 hours a day, was actually a detriment to their work. They really weren't doing as well as they thought they were doing, or as well as their boss thought they were doing. So, transferring this to writing, not only would I not want to sit for 16 hours a day writing, is that the same thing would happen, right? I would not be as effective if I was writing all day, if I was focusing. Now, some writers could do this, right? There's some writers that sit for 12 hours. I know that I wouldn't be. So you need to evaluate that, like at what point are you not effective? Can you write for 3 hours straight? Can you write for 4 hours straight? Can you write for 6 hours straight? At what point do you actually lose focus? Since writing is different, right, than other businesses. It's all coming from us. It's all coming from our head, and it can be very, very exhausting to spend that many hours writing and thinking, even if you're taking breaks in between. So one of the things that you want to look at when you are setting your schedule is what's logical for me, not only, based on my schedule, my work schedule, my schedule with family or whatever, but also like just physically, how much can I take sitting at my computer writing? And you might, let's say you had 4 hours in a day. Could you spread those out? Would you be more effective instead of working for 4 hours, working 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening? Would that make you a better writer? Would you actually be more creative and be able to write something that is more interesting? And would you be more involved in the story if you actually took that time and spread it out? So that's one of the things that you need to consider is, do I want to work for long stretches of time, or do I want to break things up? So I was reading a blog from a blogger who was talking about his schedule, and he takes one day or 2 days a week, 2 days a week to write 5 blogs. And when he writes those 5 blogs, he writes all day long. And although that sounds amazing, and I wish I could do that, I know that I can't because it takes me a couple of hours to write one blog. That means I'd be writing for 10 hours that day, even though it would be different blogs and different topics. It's just too long to sit and do one thing. So again, that's me. So you have to evaluate like what works for you. That works for him, does not work for me. So you can't look at what other people are doing. You have to evaluate it and say, okay, how can I best produce my best work? And if that means sitting for a long time, perfect. And if it means doing it in smaller increments, then that's what you need to schedule into your plan. Okay, and then the other thing that I'd like for you to do is, and it's kind of a fun project, I think, is to really be realistic and say, okay, if I really want to do this, I really want to write my book, then when am I going to do it? Right? There has to be a when. If you want to do something different than you've been doing, then you need to kind of look at your schedule and actually plot it, put it in there, right? Plan it. So let me ask you a few questions here. Okay. So first of all, write this down. How many hours do you sleep? How many hours do you normally sleep? 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, 5 hours, whatever. Write that down. Okay. Um, how long does it take you for normal, personal care? Taking showers, brushing teeth, getting makeup on, all of that stuff. Personal care type stuff. How many hours in a week does it usually take you, or in a day? You can do it per day or per week. Okay. How many hours does it take you for things like meal preparation and actually eating? So, are you somebody who just makes a sandwich really quick, or are you somebody who likes to prepare your meals and you have to prepare your meals for your family or whatever? So, write that down. How long does it take to do that? I tend to forget I have to do that. And it's like, oh, I have all this time to do this. And then I look and I think, oh, wait, no, I kind of have to eat today and I kind of have to cook my food. So that's going to take some time. And I kind of have to wash the dishes after I do this. So once I forget to plot all that, I realize I'm 2 hours behind today. Why am I 2 hours behind? Well, because I never wrote down in my planner that I eat. So, make sure that you're doing that you are writing that down. Okay. If you work, do you work outside of your home or do you have a job? Then how many hours does that take per day or per week? Then also think about the drive time to work. So some of us are working virtually, some of us are driving. So even when I work virtually, it still takes me some time to get ready. I still have to prepare everything because I teach. Make sure my office is fine, make sure my camera is working, make sure that I'm dressed correct, make sure I have makeup on, all of that stuff. And that takes time. So how much of the time does it take you to drive or prepare for work, and how many hours are you at work not writing? How many hours does it take your kids, if you have kids or animals, to school events? Do you take your dog for a walk? How often do you do that? Is it once a day? Is it once a week? Is it same thing with your kids. Do they have events that you have to go to? How long does it take you to get there? How long does it take you to be at the event? How about cleaning your house, cleaning your pets, doing laundry or other household chores? We all, we're looking at us as humans, right? So when we look at all those things we have to do and we put those hours down, how many hours do you have left logically to sit and write? I hope you have some. So notice I didn't say like TV or any of that stuff, because if you're doing that, if you're spending time doing that and you're spending too long doing that, think about cutting that. Okay, because at some point, if you want to write, you're going to have to dedicate some hours to it. And so you're going to have to cut some of those things. And obviously, we're not going to cut showers. We're not going to cut food preparations. We might be able to condense that. Like you might be able to share. Like I'm going to only cook. I'm not going to cook on my writing days. Maybe my partner is going to do that. Maybe my kids are going to do that. So that you can maybe cut a few hours there. Because this is the next thing we'll talk about is how to cut a few hours. or add, a few hours to yourself. But once you write all that down, right, you'll see that there are not very many hours available once you take all the sleep and all the work and all the chores and all that stuff. What's left? So it doesn't matter if you think that you should write for 8 hours a day. This writer, famous writer, said that he writes for 8 hours a day. It doesn't matter if you think you should, or that if it's going to move you forward faster, if you should do that. If you can't, if you don't have the time, why beat yourself up about it? Why stress about it? Why say, well, if I can't write for 8 hours, then I guess I'm not a real writer? Ridiculous, right? No, you don't want to do that. So what you want to do is you want to look at that schedule now, those hours, and say, how many hours do I have left? Maybe I have 2 hours, maybe I have 3 hours, maybe I have 1 hour. Then perfect. Count on that hour being for writing. Okay. So whatever time you're not doing all these other things that you have to do is going to be your writing time. And you have to be very, very focused. You have to say, this is going to be my schedule it, right? Put it into your planner. This is my writing time. I have a meeting during this time, and its meeting is with myself to get the writing done. So, do that because, again, it doesn't matter what you should do. You're going to use the time that you really have. And that's when you're going to make the best use of that time. You're not going to do anything else. You're not going to answer your phone. You're not going to check your email. You're not going to do anything other than plan your story, write your story, edit your story, think about your story. Anything related to your story is cool. It doesn't have to be actual writing and typing, okay? But anything related to that story is what you're going to do during that time, and that's how you make progress. So again, going back to my example of cooking, right? So if I only have that 1 hour, am I going to progress as fast as somebody who's spending 2 hours a day cooking and taking lessons? Well, maybe not. But if I really, really focus and I really, really have like a chef with me, right? Or I have something that I can really focus that half hour. I can learn to make amazing things, and over time it's going to grow, and I'm going to get better and better and better. Maybe not as fast, but maybe if I had 2 hours, I would goof off a little bit, right? So don't feel that just because you have that 1 hour of writing time that you're going to not be successful or as successful as somebody who's writing 8 hours. Maybe not, but that's okay. You're going to make steady progress. Okay, and that's what's important. Okay, so what am I saying here? I'm saying that consistency is what matters, right? So if you are consistently doing what you plan in your planner, if you're consistently spending that 1 hour, that 2 hours, or 3 hours of writing every single day, you're not missing a day unless something horrible happens, right? You're focusing, and that day is always that hour, that those 2 hours are always spent on writing. Then that's what matters. So being very consistent, not just kind of sort of someday writing, sometimes not writing, and one day I have 3 hours and another day I have no hours. That's not as good as making sure that you do it every single day. Okay. And then you also feel good that you're still taking care of all those other things you need to take care of. You're still taking your child to his practice. You're still doing, the cooking healthy meals. You're still doing the things that matter to you as well. But you're also getting that 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or whatever for yourself to write. And you're consistently doing it. So that's more important again than just kind of randomly being able to write whenever you have a moment to write. Also, one thing you want to remember, though, is that writers are always writing. So even if you are... Sorry about that. Something happened to my camera and it turned off on me. So recording, that's what happens, right? So what I was saying was that it doesn't matter if you're in front of the computer, right? So your writers are writing all the time. You don't have to be sitting there. You could be driving somewhere and think of something. You'd want to pull over to the side of the road and take notes, right, of what you thought. Or you might be sitting at your child's game and see somebody with a great hairstyle and say, that's the kind of hairstyle that I want for my character, and take a note. So when you are a writer, you're always writing, you're always thinking about writing, and ideas are coming to you. So don't feel like, yes, bad, like saying I only have this 1 hour to write and that's all I have. That's true. That might be the time that you are actually sitting at your computer, but think that you're always thinking, you're always being creative, you're always writing your story in your mind. And if you take notes and if you kind of remember those things that you thought about when you do come back to your story, you can really make great use of that writing time because you'll be ready, right, to start writing. So don't feel bad, just be consistent. The last thing, and I've mentioned many times, is to make sure not to compare yourself to other writers, that you're only comparing yourself to yourself and what you can do. Yes, it's awesome to have 8 hours to sit and write. Professional writers get to do that. Great for them. If it's not your world right now, don't feel bad. Just, be happy for them. And someday you may get there, right? Things change all the time. Life is constantly changing, right? So you may have a different job in a few years. You may have your kids may grow up and you may end up having more time. So it doesn't mean that because you only have a little bit of time now that it's always going to be that way, right? So you may sell your book and you may be able to quit your job and you may have more writing time. So be happy with the time that you have. Be consistent with the time that you have. Make really great use of it. And in the future, you probably will have more time. If you take your writing seriously and you dedicate the time, you'll see that more and more time becomes available to you to be able to write. Okay, so I hope that this has been helpful for you. If it has, please hit the like button. Please hit share with friends so that they can hear my message too, and I can get more viewers because I desperately need more viewers. So thank you, and I will see you again next Friday for my next writing tip.